Hey guys, what's going on? You are here with David Chin, and we are here at another edition of I Know His Podcast, who's number one podcast. And let me tell you, we have one of my very good friends that we met very serendipitously since December. Had one of the most amazing events that he allowed us to participate called NRVL, a humanitarian, a man of many, many, many moves, an amazing human being, above all, the one and only. And he comes from bellwether culture and unrevealed. And you've done like 200 growth stage companies across 5 continents and more and more. But I'm really excited that you're here today because my connection with you is so much more deeper than business. I'm really excited for today's podcast.
Yeah, man. Well, first off, I miss your face. Since we had that sprint going into December's Unrevealed and working on that awesome NACL program over there, I feel like naturally we're just not in that same pace. And it's really good to be back on screen with you, man. So
It is, you talk about that event, and I want to tell everyone, shout out to our buddy Jason Colker who set this up and one of our partners there.
Mhm.
I remember when I first saw that event, how great that event was. And my favorite part about the event, and I'll have Bit pull it up when we're doing this, we're putting the show and you'll see the video. It's you on stage, smiling profiling with Donovan, Cryptic, and
Ah,
Dale all together with Merc Anthony in the background, and then the stage with Uzo. We talk about that golden hour. And when I talk about that thing, what made me most excited with you was working with you and your attitude and your team and the friendships that we developed, but how happy we were. Like, I remember on Sunday out of the whole week, and I remember how exhausted we were. Like, because we were on calls, and everyone keeps changing our plans. When you're trying to get something as big as this, you have to do it. And by the end of the week, my favorite part was with you guys hanging out and going from there. And I knew at that point our cultures were aligned.
yeah. You know what though? So on the flip side, of course, Unrevealed, and the audience doesn't know about it just yet, but it's a 5-day program, right? Day and night, we are activating different communities and experiential marketing displays and galleries, entertainment, dinners. I mean, you name it. By the time Sunday hit, dude, I was like, I needed that. I needed you, David. And
I
like,
knew
like there was nothing that felt more kind of like just like a big snuggie than curling up with Cryptics and Donovan and Dale and playing Mario Kart while the sun's going down in Miami. Uzo's, as you mentioned, is on the turntables. It was fucking cool, man.
it was so beautiful, man. And the best part was the vision, because if you got to see that golden hour, it was like that money
Yeah,
shot.
for
And
sure.
that money shot, I think, was pretty important to talk about, And
Yeah.
when we talk about these events, you've been known to make these amazing events your whole entire life. Tell us a little bit about what you did and how you got to that stage of these cool things.
So prior to Unrevealed, you mean, or
Prior to Israel, absolutely.
all right,
Prior
fair
to
enough.
that.
Yeah, so look, I mean, with my background's in innovation consulting and then media, and now turned into more of a community forward focus. But everything that I've done in the past, whether it be open source fashion, Mouth Media Network, Bellwether Culture, and now Unrevealed, everything always took like my approach to growing the business and the platform and the people behind it were by throwing experiential events. So it started off as, hosting kind of like these coffees and conversation things with founders in New York City. And then it spiraled into like hosting these, innovation challenges with Google for entrepreneurs all over the world, where I think we have like 13 countries participate, or 13 cities across 7 countries participate. And, you name it. I did like with my media company with Mouth Media. I'm positive I was like the first person, or we were the first company to start live podcasting as an event. So we teamed up with, ultimately teamed up with Spring Studios and did like a monthly over there in their beautiful sunken living room where we would call different leaders across lifestyle industries. And again, these are like 40, 50, 60 people events. They're very intimate, very live in studios sort of things, invite only, never ticketed. That's always been my medium, is live events and bringing people together.
That's great.
Now, yeah, so now when, bringing it to Unrevealed, it's like we got this opportunity in Q3 going into Q4 of 21. So at that point, it was like September, October, and we're coming out of pandemic as a global pandemic. We're coming out of it. Of course, Florida was already kind of open, like they were pretty much in rhythm the whole time, but there was a lot of hesitation from the hospitality groups in terms of how much effort and resources are they going to put into programming around Miami Art Week, or a lot of people associated with the show Art Basel. And we learned, I guess everyone learned by September, October, that not only is Basel, the show, going to be back, it was oversubscribed and exponentially bigger than it was before the pandemic. So you had a lot of hospitality groups scrambling for programming in 21. And they reached out to Uzo, and who's now my business partner with Unrevealed. This is in September. And the Kimpton Surfcomber was just like, hey, do you have any ideas or people, communities that want to program? I had met Uzo at one of my events called the Innovation Mansion during South by Southwest years ago. I think it was 2017 or 2018. We did it a few years in a row. And since then, we've been kind of just collaborative partners, helping, each other with strategic relationships here and there. And recently I had driven one to him, so I was top of mind. And he reaches out to me. He's like, yo, Pav, do you have like any ideas on do you want to do anything during Art Basel in Miami? And I had done something with the Dream Hotel in 2019. I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's keep that rolling. And I was like, what day do they have available? He's like, all of them. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, the hotel literally has zero programming. I was like, okay, the Surfcomber. And, I know the Surfcomber.
Right? It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it was fucking wild. And
I don't understand what you just said. Like, literally, the hotel, you get in if you wanted to get in. So for not to have it,
yeah,
it was serendipitous because you're a good person.
Thanks. Good things happen to good people.
Absolutely, all the time.
It happens. And the reality is this falls in my lap, and we start talking about it. And within 2 days, we're like, fuck it, let's go down there and pitch them on taking all 5 days down. And so what we set out to do with Unrevealed is basically what I've done in my previous, which is have small, intimate community gatherings at scale so that we are able to fill up a hotel, but still make it feel intimate. And what we loved about the Surfcomber, again, we didn't have the pick of the litter, but it worked out it couldn't have worked out better because they have all these different spaces that you could parcel out. So for us, we were in that upper South cabana for a little bit. We had the content studio outside of the shore break room where you were taking a ton of content. And then we had the main stage where we did the finale to your mention of that money shot or that golden hour shot. So it's we were able to do that. And as that was happening, we had another 4 or 5 communities activating their own stuff, whether at the pool, the North Cabana, the gallery, the lobby gallery. It worked out so well. We took a huge swing, massive risk, but we were able to put the risk on ourselves because we basically got them the first year, no money down. It was all in, can you hit a minimum F&B? So the property had to make a certain amount through that 5 days for us to be good, for us to be made it with them. We would pay the difference. So we're like, you know what? Let's just take a swing on ourselves and say, we're going to fucking do it. So that's essentially what happened. And the rest was kind of history. That first year we planned in 7 weeks, and you came in year 2 is what you saw.
It was amazing because what I loved about it was you guys. That was it. It was, I mean, we've done so many events and the energy was there. And I think a lot of times when you're running on these type of things, like you said, December was 3 months ago, man, but it doesn't feel like it was 3 months ago.
Yeah,
it was 3 months ago. We did this 3 months ago, right? And now we're scrambling to other events and push it together. But what I loved about was your ability to comprehensively understand what the word community meant. And it's very hard in business. And I'm gonna hit you in 2 angles. I thought it's very hard for an Asian. Right? Let me throw this out there first, because me and you are dealing with shit that nobody talks about. And the second part is doing that and building a community when everything in business and everything we've been taught and everything in our culture, our personal cultures, our culture that we grew up was money, 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 money. No money, don't do it. Even though we come from historical cultures that talk about love and empathy but I joke about this because I remember hearing Ronnie Chang say on Netflix, in Chinese is I'm from Taiwan, and they go, 恭喜发财, it literally means yeah, well, you'd have more money. That's it. More money. It's all about
Yeah.
money. And then
That was the Gong Fa show that where he's like,
right?
oh, here's some
You know
more
what I
money.
mean?
The red
Exactly. And I remember thinking to myself,
I love that skit,
"Giddy," and
man. Yeah.
I was like, dude, I actually never even thought, even though I was very translation, that it really said more money.
Well, look, I mean, when you talk about Chinese culture, and obviously you know it best. I mean, my good friend, he's from Hong Kong, and you know, he said we were just talking about business generally, right, and vendors and things like that, and shit happens, right? So, you know, he was like, you know, he's like, what we believe. He's like, when the money, it's nothing personal. He goes, if the money stops, even for a moment, it's like an on and off switch. It's off. Like money stops, this business is off. It's turned down. There's no hard feelings. Go F yourself.
Right.
Money's back on. Cool. Lights are on. We're good. You know, like there's no leeway. There's no flexibility. But yeah, you're right. We come from cultures that are definitely prioritize hard work, education, and get after it. Get after that cash. And for us to take swings on people and think about, look, building something foundationally strong for that can be a platform, that's generally not in the purview of this is why I want to start a business or a new initiative.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because when I think about our cultures right now, just how we're at, right? Just our Indian cultures and the things that we learn, like it's the love, it's the chakra, it's the spirituality, it's the soul, it's feng shui, it's not upset as we get older and another balance. And it's all about this empathy and love. And then when it comes to, like you said, the business side, it doesn't leave with it. And then you change that culture. That's why I like the name that you have. You call the culture, right? And you change that culture. How hard was it for you as a business person in the initial steps to have the balls? That's the word I'm going to use to do that after a pandemic and fight the cultural inferences that you were taught in school and business life, and do that for a community and not charge money and risk it to have the super uber successful event.
Well, the selfish reason out of it was that, to your reaction of there's a hotel that's just available during a very globally recognized cultural event, right? I saw it as an opportunity that whatever I do there, if I can make it through year one, I'll have a footprint on this week for the years to come. And that was impactful, yet I didn't know what I was going to do. That was one. The second is again, I come from a background professionally where I prioritize community insistently in every role that I've had. I made sure that it was a community-based company, every single one. And it is really hard to roll up to an Art Basel or let's say a Cannes Lion or a Sundance or a South by and say, I'm going to do an event with very limited budget.
Yep.
And make like have a good footprint on it, get the resources I need to pull it off, the team, the staff, the everything. Like unless you're building, like I remember going the year that South by turned into like the Twitter house, the fucking this house, like it was just like it was madness. And it's just like you saw just the facades of the whole city turn into a brand. And you can't compete with that shit. I couldn't go to a restaurant and say, hey, I want to do a meetup here. They're like, great, $40,000, like to get this garbage ass, like saloon style bar. It's like, yo, if I have good community, I'm doing great work, and I have relationships that show up, like, and I just want to gather them. That's what I was finding the disconnect with. There's a lot of people like me, and there's a lot of companies like me as well that prioritize community, that want to bring a great experience together for others. And I was like, if that's the case, I already knew a couple dozen off the top of my head from doing community work so much. I was like, fuck it, like it's not even a thing. Let's go. And if I collectively between all my relationships just have to hit a minimum on F&B, let's pack this sucker out. But now to the last point of why I did it in this regard is that I really do believe that marketing and brands must connect to high value community, right? And I've been saying this for 8 years on my podcast. Community is your biggest defensibility as a company. They are there to pick you up when times are tough. They show up for you when you're, building a festival in 7 weeks. They're the ones that allow, they're the backbone that allows anything to happen. So I was fortunate that I was confident on, unsure, but also confident, a little maybe overzealous of doing this, but it works. Sometimes you have to be a little bit crazy, but what Unrevealed is providing forward-thinking communities of builders, a gathering space to learn, debate, collaborate on future of like digital interaction. Right now it's Web3, but it could be whatever it is, right? And I think that really hit with people. It really struck a chord. So I don't know, man. I don't even know where this is going to go in terms of, we know that this isn't a community. We know we're doing it again. There's different ideas around the internal team around, okay, are we going to be a marketing agency? Is that what we are? Experiential marketers. Okay, are we a content studio? Like Bellwether is a content studio, so we lead with that acumen? Are we an innovation hub? Like, do we now become project managers of Web3 projects because those are surfacing quite a bit, and then we have the vendors and everything like that? Do we become a tech agency? Right? We don't know. All we know is that we hit a pulse and we're on stride, and nothing is guaranteed going forward. So we're busting our ass off trying to figure out, okay, well, we had 7 weeks year one. Year two, I think we made some mistakes that prevented us from full focus till like September. So we were back into like a bit of a crunch. Like this time it was like, let's say 3 months. And this year we're like, you know what? Forget all the noise. You and I were talking about South by Southwest.
Right.
Here we are. I mean, it starts today, bro.
Right.
I'm in my living room in Brooklyn.
I don't know, Paso.
The reality is like, we were like, all right, South by, Miami Music Week, we're going to New York Fashion Week again. We're going to, like do these dinners. And it's like, yo, wait the fuck up. Like,
it's a lot. It's a lot. And like, we all know how it's hard. It's very hard to do, man. Like, no matter how many years we've done this, like me and it's hard.
Yeah. And let's not forget, we're coming out of like whatever they call it, the crypto winter, and we're going into a recession where brands are pulling back on spend. Like, there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of like, can we even get the branded partnerships that are going to allow us to fly? And that's where we are. I mean, we got super lucky. Year two, we were supported fully by a few different buyouts that we had. So we produced like the World of Women Gala, for instance. And they had anchor sponsors. We did not have Diageo or let's say Johnny Walker Blue via Diageo. That was World of Women, but we benefited from that because we provided that experience. Like we didn't have Lighthouse as the sponsor for Wednesday night Boys Club did, right? And we came in. So we had a lot of sponsors work through our doors, but it was only through the community supports that we actually like supported, that we were then able to subsidize our costs and get to at least a break-even point.
You know what's amazing about this, and this, to me, a lot of that is a very business strategy, and we talk about this. And I was at Deloitte, I remember talking to one of my manufacturing partners, and they talked about time management. And they said, the reason we have our manufacturing facility out in Mexico is because when it comes to time management, we can directly shoot it over to the U.S., where if it's in China, it's going to take weeks and weeks at that point, months to ship over. And so it's a loss leader, but it's a leader that generates bigger profit. And people, when they talk about business, they don't understand that the strategic environment of what you're doing allows you to have other business discussions that are there, but the risks are absurd, right? When you start thinking in those terms in business and the things that you put together and all the things that you have, before you were in this space, did you always imagine yourself as a child doing community, or what made you focus so heavily on community? What was that life change that you realized was significant? Because it wasn't just in business, it had been in life.
Obvious, man, since I was a kid. Like for me, I'm the one in my friends group that makes the plans. I'm the one in the family that makes the plans. in high school, I was part of all these different like vocational clubs. Like if anyone knows what DECA is, it's like a business club, right?
Let's go, marketing, let's go. I should still get a Deca Club, bro. That's why I used the Deca, man. Let's go. Future marketing, I'm so fit, man.
It's wild, right? Like, so I mean, I was doing all those things. It was just like, class president. Yeah, like, but I didn't try. Like, this wasn't like a focus of mine. I wasn't like, I want to be president. Like it wasn't these things. It just like it was. I was a very natural connector of friends. So my high school, growing up, and I'm super fortunate to grow up where I did. We're on the Queens-Nassau border, so that's between New York City and Long Island, and we're in a spot where like it's kind of like it's like the immigrant dream. So we all start in Queens, and then it's like the first option that's still close enough to Queens is my neighborhood, which is New Hyde Park, or specifically the school that I went to is called Herrick's. And we have, even till now, I think we have over a 50% Asian population there in our school. But generally also very, very, very diverse, both socio and economically diverse neighborhood. And with that, you have clusters of folks, right? Like you'll have the Asians hanging out with the Asians, or the South Asians hanging out with the South. Like you'll have the kind of cliques. I definitely do not identify with being a part of any one versus being a part of all of them.
Right.
So that's kind of like how I grew up, and that's how I've been. In college, it just kind of like it became the same thing. I was
You're a smart man, dude.
Yeah, that's it. But like it was obvious. So like when I started in business and doing my own thing, I was like, well, I just want to like, let's just bring people together and talk about this. Like this is a problem we're all facing. Let's talk about it.
It's interesting you say that, dude. And I want to get back a little bit. I was really good at talking to a lot of people because as the Asian kid growing up in Colorado, then Texas, and only having 3 Asian families in El Paso, I had to assimilate very, very quickly and be everyone's friends because it was the smartest thing to do, right? Same thing with you. It was the smartest thing to do. A lot of it was just so I wouldn't get bullied when I was smaller and younger, right? And because I was different race. And
you were small? You were small?
Yeah. But I was the smallest. Like, really? Up to 12 or 13, dude, I was only 5'2" at 12.
Stop.
And then I got like a 5-inch growth spurt that summer, then another 4-inch, and then I became obviously 6'4", 6'5". But I remember my childhood shaped me vividly because growing up in the U.S. in the 80s with the situations that we were in and my conditions, I remember that the only way you could do if I get your ass kicked was really just being nice to everybody and being funny. But that skill set and that fear, for anyone that's listening who went through that, I'm sure you went through that too. You can almost, we don't talk about it, but the EQ is so high because you can turn that negativity and make it empathetic and then think about the community because it came from you trying to protect everybody else. See, you and I are so similar in so many ways because the reason you're a leader running is because you had to be the big adult when your parents were here. You had to be the translator. You had to be the hard worker. That's what I had to do. And we've never had this conversation. I already feel the chills going back and up on my body, yours, and our eyes, because we didn't have a choice, right? And then we became these leaders of empathy. But I want everyone here to understand that those circumstances that you might feel as a young person at a time are the worst things that can happen to you if you look at it from the light that me and you talk about, which is, I mean, it's only 2 ways, right? Either shitty or not shitty. And I prefer not shitty, right? Because shitty already, like everyone's already going to shit on me anyway, so I might as well do the better way, not shit on myself. That's what led to what you did. And I want everyone to know that because that's a sign of hope. And I think, I want to hear that part of it from you, but wouldn't you agree, like, all that negative stuff is what made you so empathetic and so amazing?
Well, there's a couple things to this. I mean, with, I always do joke though, growing up that like, I'm never scared of shit because my mouth gets me into a lot of trouble and it gets me right out of it. Like as a puppeteer, like get it out of it. I've never gotten hit once, and like God knows I should have gotten hit like regularly, bro. I should have taken it. So like, my mouth gets me in and out of a lot of stuff through my life. Of course, I've matured over my years, but that always wasn't the case.
I probably matured over the years. I thought.
but So, to go back on like, the struggle conversation. Now, I want to be clear, like the area. So my brother and sister, they're both 6 and 7 years older than me. I think that they probably felt that immigrant struggle more than I did. By the time that I grew up, when I was very young, it was definitely like, so my parents, when my dad came over, he came over because he came for his master's. He went to Cooper Union. He's an absolute brilliant guy. He was at IIT back in India, Benares, and like just a brain. They do come from good means back home also. So they didn't come here like basically searching for, let's say, a better life. My dad was looking, he saw his friends at the time being like in Australia, London, New York, and he's just like, why the hell am I here? Why am I here in Bombay? Like, let me get the hell out of here. So he applied for schools, got into Cooper Union. At the time, it was a free to, if you got in, it's Ivy League. Like, that's it. He came here for engineering school. Anyway, he did really well. And then late 80s recession hit, got completely wiped out, over leveraged in real estate. And I was born in 81. So I felt that at a young age where you saw that collapse, and then a slow rebuild. Then I saw later in life, meaning like as a kid, that where I could understand things, what hard work really looks like and what resilience and fortitude and negotiation was. My father is absolutely brilliant in the way that he maintained our home, allowed us to still live there, and for me to still go to that school, although we had absolutely nothing. And then built up step by step by step by step. Even when I went to college, it wasn't even a thing. Like for me, it was like, I'm going to SUNY. Like, like where I'm not applying to any private schools or anything like that. It's like, oh, where are you going? I was like, I got one application. It's going out to all four state schools, and that's where I'm going. But yeah, I kind of saw both of it, right? I saw the high flying, like his business was crushing, and then I saw like a real humbling experience for our whole family, and then moving back up. So I'll say that, yes, I agree that you do develop a really crazy level of EQ, being able to navigate. For me, being in a grade school that had both, let's say, not as fortunate and then fortunate folks, it was an interesting toggle between the two, because again, I didn't identify with any one single group or one single kind of clique. So for me, there was no, it wasn't homogenous at all. Like the EQ for me was developed in, first of all, I was a very small, I mean, I still am a tiny Indian kid, right? So like, but I had a lot of other Indian kids around, right? So there wasn't that. But I do think that just being relatable and being able to understand other people's perspective is not the same as yours is a really huge lesson that I grew up with. And so that's where my EQ comes from. It's just that.
I love your EQ, man. I love the empathy thing. I think leading with it is such an important thing. You look at the current state of business. You talked about it. You see this recession looming. You see the way the world is working, go from there. I look at the kids now, man. And I look at what we had to deal with in the 80s and the 90s. In the 80s and 90s, 80s was everyone was trying to be Scarface, and 90s everyone wanted to be a gangster, right? 2000 tech starts coming in, and we start running, and we're caught between the boomers where we're sitting at. But now you look at tech, you look at how quickly it's moving and how much more is interconnected. Yet there's still distances from the real interaction between your kids, right, and their cousins at different generations. How much do you see tech helping or hurting this current generation, and how can we be more mindful of it?
Ooh, loaded question. I mean, we think about it. I have a toddler at home. I know you have young kids, but like, yeah, you think about it a lot. I like to take the glass half full approach to this. I mean, I have 3 nephews and a niece, and all of them are in range between 12 years old and 16 years old. They, to your point, are not, they're fully digitally native, right? They are more fluid in online environments and gaming environments or whatever it might be. I, it used to be when Starbucks first kind of made their huge wave, they were associating themselves as your third place, right? Remember that? It was like home, work, and Starbucks.
Right.
And for kids, the reality is that it's homework and either gaming or whatever that portal is that they use. Usually gaming. I think you would know better the stat on this, but it's over 80% of kids Gen Z, and then going back uh, below alpha, they're fully there. It's a whole game.
80%, and then like 67%, like they're our age, right? That everyone else plays, but it's ridiculous.
It's 80 plus. Yeah, it's something like that. But that's your third place. They like, when I asked my nephew, Amr, I'm like, yo, what do you do? Like, what does your crew do on a Friday or a Saturday? Because I never see him just like putzing around, like I putzed around, like I hung out in like parking lots, man, for hours. Yeah. Like,
right.
like,
like stupid things, like walking around for 8 hours and then you're hanging out with your friends for another 10 hours, and all you're doing is, where are we going to go? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. Get a slush puppy out. Like, it was silly. Right. So I just wonder, I'm very curious about what he does. And the reality is that they don't have as much of a, like, this social priority to get out of the house and get fresh air. And like, again, like our generation, that's going to be our biggest, like, is like, oh, why don't you get out of the house, get some fresh air? When I was young, I was, out till morning. My parents didn't know where I was till the night. But the reality is, with all these trackers and devices and technology, it's like the parents on one side, at least from my exposure to parents, are really run a tight leash, man, compared to when we were younger. And then also the younger generations are just more comfortable at hanging out online with each other. They could be living in the same neighborhood where they could just pick up a bike and go for a bike ride, but I feel like they just choose to explore different universes. And I don't think it's a good thing, and I don't think it's a bad thing either. I think domain expertise generally is important. I think the understanding communication is really important, but holistically, like, I think it's an issue if I won't say when, because I think my nephews, from what I see, are okay. But like, if they can't pick up a phone call and call somebody, like, I think that's an issue. It's being versed in all different types of communications is what I worry about.
Dude, absolutely.
So, and it's interesting because, I always say, like, our microcosm of a generation, whatever, 1978 to 1982 or 83, where you had enough of an exposure to the internet growing up, but you didn't grow up with it, it gives us the ability to communicate with old timers and relate, as well as, thankfully now, with my nephew, my niece, and everybody, right? That the younger folks. So I think, if I'm to pass down learnings to my daughter, it's going to be the exposure to being comfortable in all different environments of engagement. So I think, like, with technology, I like how, who knows where AI is going? Who knows where robotics is going? Who knows where, like, we're going to be talking. I saw today, what is it? WorldCoin is basically where they're working on something where it'll authenticate if you're a human, because the interactions between human and machine are really going to be difficult to decipher quite soon, right? So there. It's a crazy thing, man. It's just, I don't
blow my mind, dude. You talk about that. You talk about Chat GPT and all the AI stuff, and now people can run in. You're on TikTok running the videos, like you said. We grew up in the '80s, where, like, it was still dial up, and people were showing us freaking AOL CDs were coming in, right? And we're like, oh, and the people were like big ALCD trees, right? And it was a fun time. But I think your ability to talk about interconnectivity in this, and your ability to talk about working with everyone, I see that's a huge part of success when I see people, is your ability to work with everyone, treat everyone nice, be empathetic to everyone, and understand where they're coming from, while still maintaining your principles and communicating if there's mistakes, right? And understanding if there's mistakes and saying if these are not intentional. I think a lot of people don't lead in business that right way, man. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I interviewed Damon John as a live event when he was opening up a co-working space in New York, and I'll never forget. I asked him the question of like, how do you stay on the pulse of, like, how do you stay relevant? Like, how do you stay on the pulse of culture? And he got offended, like
Wow.
straight up offended. He's like, yo, he's like, because I pay attention, I am the culture. I was like,
Right.
I was like, but you know what? I was like, yeah, you know what? He's spot on. He's right. Like, the reality is, because he keeps up.
Yeah.
He, you know what I mean? He's interested in what the young folks are interested from a aspect of, to your point, successful business folks just know what the hell is going on,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And they could relate to it and understand why it matters, whether it's for me or not. That's a whole different story, and it doesn't matter. It matters that it's important to society and the young folks growing up.
I love that, man.
So
I love your thought process, and that's how I know your macro level thinking is beyond what most people can comprehend, because it's not about gaming. It's not about anything. It's about access to the generation. That's all this is about. And your ability to understand, if today it's gaming and tomorrow it's basketball and next week it's music, well, guess what? If you can adapt, that's what you're saying. And I love that you have that thought process, because that adaptation is extremely important. Before you were doing all this, what did you do before that? Tell us a little about your background before building communities.
oh man, dude, it was out of school. I mean, it was a very short stint, man. Out of school, I worked at Merrill Lynch.
Big Merrill Lynch after school. That must have been cool. That must have been cool.
It was fun, man. Listen, I take away a lot of positive. Yeah, it was 100%. It was like I actually really have a great reverence for folks that work in those institutions and that could build inside of them, that could network and weave and bob in those sorts of politics. It's pretty incredible, and not to mention everyone's whip ass smart, right? So it's not an easy environment to thrive in. So
People don't understand what you just said. You said weave and bob with the politics, and no one understood you're talking about the internal politics.
oh yeah,
That's what we're talking about, right? At the light was the same thing. Internal politics, 50% of the problem.
yeah. So like, I was over on a trading floor, and it was a crazy, wild experience. Eyes wide open. It was bigger than life. It was a movie, right? And then I went over into prime brokerage. It was a new thing. It was new for the company at the time, and it was long hours. I just feel like it's just standard, right? Things are long hours. You do it. It's it afforded me to live in the city at a very young age, meaning the big city, Manhattan, and I took a lot away from it when I I lasted 3 years, man, right? So 3+ years. So I started in '04. I was out by Q3 '07 before the '08 crash. But, you already saw the defaults happening. The rumblings were happening. They were there. But I didn't have good timing. I just need to go. Like, it wasn't intentional, right? Like, I wasn't like, oh, things are about to explode. Like, I didn't have that sort of hindsight. I wish I did. Probably would have made some money. But so I left and I had no plan. Like, I literally was just like, this is not going to be it. And I left. And actually, so this is how I actually got into the community building professionally. So I was living in Chelsea at the time and putzing around, playing Halo, and like have my friends over every night. My flatmate, he is a product designer that just like, he would crush like a 12-pack of Bud Heavies every night without fail. And I'm just like, rail thin, thick frame glasses, just come home, rip through it. We play video games. He's like, oh, what are you doing tomorrow? I was like, I guess I'll just go. At the time, there's only a Starbucks, right? There weren't really a lot of indie coffee shops. Like, go to Starbucks and work on my business plan. He's like, what are you planning? I was like, I don't know. And so like that fun and game, like, lasted all so long till I'm like, oh shit, I'm like really ripping through cash now. And so what I did was, this is where I learned marketing and community, is I was like, I need to make rent. And I was like, what am I good at? I was like, I'm good at bringing people together. At the time, this is what I was 26 years old. At the time, we thought we were old, and there were societal pressures on meeting that person and getting engaged and getting married, right? And everybody would come to me like, yo, Pav, like, do you know a guy or do you know a girl or like whatever? Like, and I would actually naturally hook people up on dates and stuff. And I did know people from different crews. So it was like kind of like I enjoyed it, but I was like, maybe there's something here. I was like, yo, people want to meet each other. There's no apps, there's nothing, right? So I started doing a speed dating event for South Asians in New York City. And the way that I did it is I went on Facebook, and you could spam the shit out of as many people as you wanted on Facebook at the time. And I went to really good looking South Asians that lived in Manhattan, because by default, if you're living in the city, you figured out how to live in the city. So right. So there's some level of interest there, whether it's professionally or just aptitude, right? and then the second is, well, I got good looking people. People like to look at good looking things. So I just messaged a bunch of people, be like, hey, this is the concept. It's VIP invite only. You were referred by, and I'd basically find people when they were like commenting on other people's posts. You were referred by that person, right? So they knew there was some sort of connectivity. Dude, the first time I did it, it was sold out. 50 tickets the first time at $100 each, and that was good money, man, right? And then I got 20% of the bar. It was like Tuesday at a hookah bar in the Lower East Side, like so. I did that probably once every other month, and it hit rent and started working on what would be next. So
that's amazing, man. It's so crazy because you left the guaranteed job despite the despite the stress of life, despite the stress from family.
Yeah.
And
my parents never knew. I never told my parents.
Oh, you never told your parents?
Are you crazy, bro? Are you nuts?
Dude, I figured you did. I didn't know how you did it.
Yo, they would have gone ham on me, man. I just rather not deal with that conversation. They started catching on over time. My brother and sister first, because like the facial hair and this, that. They're like, well, Meryl doesn't allow facial hair. Like, let's be real. The signs were there, but they're both physicians, so they didn't catch on to it right away. It was probably like a good year and a half of like not being a Meryl till they figured it out.
I love it, man. I love it. And I love the fact that you care so much about family and the respect of family, right? And I think that's the one thing that we don't talk about when it's underlining is at the end of the day, no matter how hard it is, how much stress it is, and how different culture are, empathy and love is probably the most important thing. No matter if your dad hugs you or not, no matter if you've done it, but being empathetic and loving them, I think is important. I've noticed that, like, when you talk about what you just said about, I remember when I left Deloitte, bro, I was in freaking tears. Like, that phone call with my mom was the hardest phone call I ever could have had, man. I was like, hey, let me tell you what's going on. And it was like, they were very supportive. I had my other business at the time. And I just remember that sinking feeling that you have in your gut, that same one that we can't even tell anyone, but you know what I'm talking about? That one, that phone call, everybody called it. You start getting business, you're like, like, you're like, I'm breathing. But that's to let everyone here know that, like, nobody has it figured out. Right? Nobody really understands the plan, but the plan is, if you know you're doing something great and better, then continue to be good and better, and the universe will provide and move forward with that, right? And with that in mind, I want to ask you, if there was a piece of advice that you could give all our listeners, what would that piece of advice be in business or in life?
Wow. I mean, look, I just went through something that I reflected on, and I posted up on LinkedIn pretty publicly just a couple of days ago. But like, when we're going through, and business meaning like starting your own business, creating something new and trying to drive value, it's easy to continuously just pound the pavement. And you don't necessarily realize what you're doing to your own health. Like, it starts off with maybe like some sleepless nights and things like that, and it could escalate. But like, take moments to just like disconnect, decompress, be present. And not that I didn't even do that. Like, if you talk to like 9 out of 10 people in my like that are close with me, I'm probably like number one on their chill list. Like, I'm super relaxed. I take things as it comes. I don't really stress the things, the small things, but at the same time, priorities will happen, ups and downs will happen, and you have to be really resilient. For me, recently, I was on a flight and it felt like I had an aneurysm. Like, I don't know what
Oh,
that is,
wow.
and I didn't have an MRI, but and again, like, I'm okay. It was more of a startling moment where I knew whatever was happening to me was stress induced, although I didn't feel like I was stressed the fuck out. So the reality is that although I was plugging forward and just kind of like going with it, I probably over the last 4 or 5 months, like, did not pay attention to myself, and like just signs, like your body talks to you, just listen to you, listen to yourself, be present always. And again, I think, you kind of let that for whatever it's worth, you kind of take things for granted every now and then. And, when things really step up like that, or like kind of show an instance of, having a scary moment in front of your wife and kid, and you're just like, okay, it's not that serious. Nothing is that serious. Like, really put everything back into perspective. To your point, it's family. It's family. It's family. It's family for me, and I think most people, it's family, family, family. So forget anything that I might be working on or whatever it is. Like, that can't take precedent over risking my family's well-being. So that would be. I think that's what it is. And again, it's really just not being afraid to hypothetically pick up the phone, and call somebody, and in a business sense of like actually pounding the pavement, right? Like, just be comfortable with, like, I think everything's a numbers game, right? Like, I think a great book is Predictable Revenue, even though it's more of like a workbook than it is a book. But getting to a state, and it's not easy, of predictable revenue using automation, being smart about your time, and listening to yourself. That would be the advice.
I love it, man. I love hearing about that. I appreciate you sharing that personal journey. And I think, dude, we're in our 40s. Like, I just have to say, dude, like, when you're
Yeah.
saying these things, that was my reality when I first had health care. I was like, bro, I am not in my 20s anymore. Although I think I am. And these are where people start having health things. And I think the best piece of advice I heard, and I appreciate you saying, was exactly what you said, being in the present and understanding and just knowing that it can't be that serious, right? Because you just don't know.
And I'll say that, like, dude, even another thing that, like, I really like to lean back on is the fact that, like, nothing, very few, we glorify as a culture, like, young entrepreneurship, and that's what makes the news.
Yeah.
But the average age of an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur, is 45 years old.
Yep.
I'm not even there yet, right? So I'm hoping that, like, I
Me
could,
too. That's what I'm hoping too. Yep.
and like, and the reality is like, when you, my visualization in my own head is like, when you're climbing from the base of a mountain to the peak, let's pretend that each step you take is the same distance. But as you get closer to that peak, each step has more impact in terms of the height it gives you, right? So consistency really matters a lot, because when you're getting to that peak, you're still taking the same steps. It's just over time, it's consistency. And sure, everyone, I do think, deserves, everyone that's doing hard work with the right intentions deserve some strokes of luck. But luck only finds people that are working, like that are consistent. So that's the reality, like, just kind of stick to the plan. Don't pay attention to yourself, and don't be afraid to make a move when it's in front of you.
I love it, Matt. Peter, go ahead and give us your social media handles as well as your website and the company's website so people can follow you, brother.
Yeah, sure. So you could follow me on most things. So it's Pavan Bahl. It's PAVANBAHL. But if you take out all the A's, so it's PVNBHL. That's my personal. And if you wanted to check out what we're doing over at Unrevealed, we're currently onboarding community partners and programming partners, as well as brands to help facilitate kind of what I expect to be the future of events, marketing, and experiential, is really quality communities at scale. That's nrvld.co. And you could check out everything over there. It's pretty much linked to it. That's it. That's it. Everything else, I'm I'm pretty visible on the internet, so you'll find.
I love it, my man. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy. Thank you for sharing such personal things. For David Chen, the NRVL family, my boy Pavan, and everyone else that's here, we thank you guys for all the time. We'll hope to see you guys next week. Stay strong, stay present, stay happy, and stay loved. Good night, guys.